Hey guys, I was working on a new Supervillains Explored video, but I got delayed by all the homework and tests and, well, the usual shebang. So, that video won't really be up for a little while longer. But to keep you all happy in the meantime, I decided to take a look at the comics attached to the now deceased animated show, Avengers Earths Mightiest Heroes. As many of you probably know, Earth's Mightiest Heroes was cancelled due to the infinite stupidity of the homoerotic fatty sandwich duo that is Jeff Loeb and Joe Quesada. And in its place, we will be receiving some soulless, highly commercialized shovelware intended to completely follow the style of the Avengers movie that Loeb and Quesada are trying to pass off as a sequel show to Earth's Mightiest Heroes. But that's off topic. And I've more than spoke my mind on that little issue, so let's actually talk about these comics. So yeah, the comics. I have two small paperbacks of the original 4-issue miniseries of Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and the first volume of the new ongoing series. So, these books that I review are based on the show. They're set within the show's they're set within the same continuity as the show. So I thought I'd clear that up. So yeah, the first book I'll be talking about contains the 4-issue miniseries that was released while the first season of the show was still airing. Now, one thing about all these issues is that they are pretty much an anthology of stories that are set in random places in the show's continuity. They don't contradict anything that happens in the show, but rather they flesh out the universe a lot more and they answer some questions. Some questions, not all. The issues all contain 2 stories each as well, and one very big detail here is that all these comics were written by Christopher Yost, the head writer of the show, and a guy who's responsible for some other great animated Marvel stuff like Wolverine, the X-Men, and Hulk vs. The first story of this book starts out with Captain America fighting one of his oldest and most obscure villains, Batroc the Leaper, but that's just an opener. The issue is really centered around the Super Adaptoid, one of the most obscure 60s Avengers villains, which is basically an android with the ability to imitate the abilities and powers of all the Avengers. And yes, for the DC fans out there, this robot is pretty much the Avengers equivalent to a Mazo. Now, the second story in this issue is actually pretty cool, where we see Hawkeye and Black Panther fighting against Whiplash, the female Whiplash that's in the show. I always thought that Hawkeye and Panther's relationship in the show was really interesting, and it's even more so here. They really get the personality of these two characters down right from the show. The second issue opens with the Avengers going up against Crimson Dynamo in Russia. While fighting Dynamo, they encounter another superhero team, the Winter Guard. This story ultimately explains how Dynamo joins the Masters of Evil, although it is cool to see Darkstar and the Talking Bear Ursa Major. The second story here shows Ant-Man and Hulk taking on the Mad Thinker and his awesome android. This is one of my favorites out of the whole book because it's simply a battle of wits between Hank Pym and the Mad Thinker, and the writing here is about as top-notch as the best episodes from the show. Hell, I'd recommend this book for this 7-page story alone. The next issue begins with a story that's set after one of the first episodes of Season 1 after the Hulk leaves the Avengers after being controlled by the Enchantress. The plot is that 2 cosmic alien villains from the regular Marvel comics, the Collector and the Grand Master of the Elders of the Universe, make a wage on a fight between Thor and the Hulk. So they mind control Thor to attack Hulk. This is one of the longer stories of these comics, but it's also one of the best. Plus, they introduced the Elders of the Universe into the show's continuity, so that's another really awesome set of obscure characters that they threw in there. So that's always a plus. The second story features Wasp and Captain America fighting against the Wendigo. And it's a very intense story because Cap is very badly hurt, and Jan is the only one who can actually fight the Wendigo. So it's a pretty decent little story, if a bit short. The next issue is different in the fact that it is only one big story stretching across the whole issue. The story is that the Masters of Evil have reactivated the robot Ultimo, the giant robot that Iron Man fought at the very beginning of the very first episode. So they use the robot to help them fight the Avengers again. Not a whole lot to say about this story, but there's a great little Easter egg at the end where the Avengers ask a teenage boy named Peter Parker, hint, hint, to take their picture. Overall thoughts. It's pretty clear that Chris Yost can work very well under pressure because he was required to write stories in the frame of less than 10 pages. That's not an easy task. Believe me, I know. And that's even more evident with the next set of comics that I'm reviewing. The next paperback collects the first 4 issues of the currently ongoing Earth's Mightiest Heroes comic series. The book itself is actually very small, and all the stories here are pretty much all 2 per issue. The first issue made me so excited that I actually bought the single issue itself, where the Avengers fight against both Fin Fang Foom and the Mandarin. Yeah. I don't think I need to say anything more. The second story is really nothing but an introduction to Phil Coulson into the cartoon continuity and a recap of the previous season. I really could have done without this story, and I would have just instead had the whole issue center around the Mandarin and Fin Fang Foom, but that's just my personal preference. The second issue has the first story centered around Hulk, Wasp, and Hawkeye fighting against the Fantastic Four villain known as the Wizard. And the second story actually answers a question that occurred at the end of the first season, which was, what happened to Grey Gargoyle? A decent issue, although I don't want to give a whole lot away. The next issue is my favorite out of the whole series, because it starts with Captain America and Nick Fury fighting against the supervillain team known as the Zodiac. And for all the hardcore comic book fans out there, they actually touch upon Nick Fury's relationship to the Zodiac leader Scorpio, which I will not spoil here, but if you are a comic book fan, then you already know what it is. The second story in this issue has Hawkeye and Black Panther chasing Kang's girlfriend, Ravonna, across time. The best part here is that we actually get to see Kang in his persona as the Pharaoh Rama Tut. So this serves as a great precursor to the Kang episode in the second season, and plus, they make a whole bunch of really awesome references to the Kang from the 616 universe. So the last issue starts with a great storyline that sees the return of the Grand Master, who has captured the Hulk, Thor, and Ben Grimm, aka The Thing. And he pits them all against another Elders of the Universe character known simply as the Champion. I really don't care for the second story where Hawkeye and Black Widow basically go on a date to beat up some Hydra agents. To me, that's just kind of filler. But overall, a great first volume. So, if you're a fan of the show, then I highly recommend these comics. They really add a lot of layers to the show's universe, and they answer a lot of questions that the show left hanging in the wind. Even though they are just tie-in comics, as far as tie-in comics go, they are above average. They also appeal to the hardcore comic book fans, like me, because Chris Yost has managed to insert so many awesome and obscure characters in here. You can tell the guy is as much of a fan of comics as the people who watch the show. So, if you love the show, I cannot recommend these comics enough, and to me, they complete a show that was killed unfairly before its time. I'll see you all later.